The Florida Gators are your 2025 NCAA tournament champions for the third time in program history. The Gators are bringing the title back to Gainesville. Todd Golden in year three. He gets the job done last night in a thrilling game between Houston and Florida. 65-63 was the final. In a game where Walter Clayton Jr. really couldn't find himself consistently throughout. Made a big impact in the second half, though, in the final stretch of the game. Had other guys like Will Richards step up in big-time spots, Elijah Martin making some big plays down the stretch, along with Alex Condon and all the guys we've talked about all season long with Florida. Brandie, I'll start with you. You're back from San Antonio. Welcome back to the podcast. What did you think about the Gators' performance last night, being crowned the kings of college basketball for the 2025 season with that win over the Cougars?
Yeah, a really impressive win. And really, the game went how a lot of their games this tournament and this season went, where they've been down and have found a way to will a win out somehow, some way. And it's really been the name of the game, not even in the tournament, but also in the regular season, too. They were down by 12 at one point to Houston last night and somehow ended up winning the game. They also were down by 9 to Auburn at one point. They were down to UConn when they played against UConn, down against Texas Tech as well. So it's kind of been really impressive to see this tournament run for them, where they've just had their back against a wall and found a way to get the job done. And doing it with Walter Clayton going 1 from 7 from the three-point line last night, just really impressive and a testament to the depth that they've had all season.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the preview I did by myself that Houston obviously was going to want to take Walter Clayton out of the game early just from the start, making him uncomfortable. And they really succeeded at that. I mean, the first half, it was pretty much a rock fight. I mean, 7 field goals and 8 turnovers for Florida throughout the first 14 minutes of the game. Will Richard was really the only guy that was providing a spark for them on the offensive end. And LJ Cryer, he was keeping it up for Houston on that side of the ball. And that first half, Brandie, I mean, Houston, they looked about as locked in on the defensive end as they have all season long. I remember there was one possession where they just completely swamped everything Florida was trying to get to and forced a jump ball. It really felt like they had all the energy. But then in the second half, I mean, things really just started to change kind of midway through, getting close to that under 10 marker. And it just seems like the pace of the game kind of got away from Houston there. At least that's the feel I had of it. I think that Florida was finally able to get it to the kind of style of game they wanted to play, and ultimately I think that's why they ended up coming out on top. Because if things would have trended the way they did the entire first half, I think we're sitting here talking today about Kelvin Sampson taking home this title and not Florida.
Yeah, I agree. The entire first half, really, Houston made Florida play their name of the game. They slowed down the pace and they ran the offense how they wanted to, which is slow, longer possessions. And Houston really wasn't able to do that towards the back half of the second half of this game. And that ultimately is what allowed Florida to come back and win the game. I thought Javier Francis in the first half for Houston was their X factor. Thought he had one of his best games all season in that first half. But ultimately, their offense just couldn't buy a bucket towards the end of the game. And I wouldn't say that's because their offense itself was bad. I think Florida's defense really just honed in and locked down, and that's what it came down to. Um, I can't believe the final possession, too, the way that it ended. That was kind of crazy. But what a perfect ending on an awesome college basketball season. Couldn't have asked for a better 3 Final Four national championship games. So that was exciting. I'm really glad it was a close game, and because at one point it did look like Houston was just gonna run away with it. They were up 12, and just possession after possession did not seem like it was going Florida's way. So I'm kind of happy that Florida came back the way that they did, because they made it a more exciting game, and that's what a national championship game between 2 phenomenal teams is supposed to be like. So yeah, I do hurt for Emmanuel Sharp. Kind of that last possession was really tough to watch. Also, I think fouls kind of played a little bit of a part here. Tugler fouled out of the game, and after he fouled out, could really tell Houston was missing him out there on the floor on the defensive end.
Yeah, another guy, you mentioned Emmanuel Sharp, too, not having the best night. Jawan Roberts, I mean, Kelvin Sampson himself said it. Jawan wasn't hitting the shots that you normally expect out of him. He had some bunnies there in the paint that you just expect him to put up and in with ease, and it just wasn't working on that night. It was a brutal shooting night for them, 34% from the field, 24% from three as well. It wasn't much better for Florida, though, with 39 and 25 as their shooting percentages. But it just kind of feels like that the weight of just LJ Cryer having to do everything and find the spark for Houston was too much to overcome in this one, because you looked across the board. Emmanuel Sharp, he did not have his best game. He kept them in it against Duke, and then in this game he turned around and didn't have the best night. Milos Uzon, he could never get anything going. He put up numerous attempts from three, and he didn't get any of them to fall. It just kind of feels like it wasn't really meant to be Houston's night when Florida turned the tide to kind of wanting to put game pressure on them and force them into making buckets. And I just think that ultimately was the nail in the coffin for them, because when it was that gritty, slow pace where they got physical with Florida and tried to make it a defensive game, you saw how well they were able to take over that, and it just wasn't meant to be in the end. And Walter Clayton, I got to give him a huge amount of credit, because in the first half, it looked like the storyline about this game was going to be, Houston clamps down Walter Clayton and Florida just goes out like that. But with about 7:54 left, I think it was, he got the and one layup, and he was just able to get it rolling from there. I saw you tweet something about Walter Clayton being inevitable, and that's really what it kind of felt like, because he had 11 of his points. All of the points that he scored in the game came in the second half, I believe, or maybe two of them were in the first half. I was just really impressed with his resolve and his ability to just find a way to get the gritty buckets that his team needed there down the stretch.
Yeah, and actually there was a point where Todd Golden benched him in the second half and Florida went on a run. That was a really impressive run to get them back into the game. And then he made a decision to put him back in. And once he put him back in, that's what kind of when Florida really started to take the lead and put the pressure on, in a nice back and forth. Um, it's kind of crazy too. Florida only had the lead in this game. I believe it was like under 2 minutes or something like that. Houston had the lead for
Mm-hmm.
around 30, 31 minutes in this game. I think there were 11 or 12 lead changes in this game too. So it really was like a true back and forth for most of the game. And besides that one spurt where Houston really just took over. So yeah, I mean Walter Clayton Jr., like he obviously didn't have the best night, but he made buckets when it counted. He drew fouls when it counted, and ultimately that's what led Florida to winning this game. Um, and what a great job by Will Richard on the glass and on the offensive side, being able to step up when your star player isn't having the best night in the national championship game. Will Richard really is who helped will this team to a national championship.
Yeah, 100%. If you gave me that stat line for Walter Clayton saying he's only going to hit 1 3 on the whole game, he's going to just be completely taken out of it in the first half, I think I would have put all my money on Houston in that. But then you take into account the fact that Houston just couldn't find the bucket getters besides LJ Cryer. And I said that in the preview, they were going to have to find somebody else besides LJ Cryer to get it going, because they were able to find it late against Duke, but it was honestly kind of a similar recipe, really. He had all of the pressure to get things going when Houston was going through those spells where they just couldn't find anything against Duke, and that kind of same performance replicated itself, except this time Emmanuel Sharp wasn't able to get it going, and the guys that made the plays down the stretch, like your Jawan Roberts, who was able to get to the line and ultimately win that semifinal game that just wasn't meant to be. And I guess moving away from the game itself, just more strictly narrative things here. I'll start with Houston, because I just think this is a crushing blow for them. I mean, I just said it to you before we started here. It kind of feels like this was Kelvin Sampson's best shot at getting the national championship. That's not to say that, any team he has from here on out, it's just not going to be able to happen. But I really feel like he had the perfect mix here of a team that was able to really hone in on the defensive side of the ball like his teams in the past have always had. And then they kind of had that dynamic of being able to create shots and have guys that make big-time plays on the offensive end as well, where in the past you would kind of look at Houston teams and say they didn't necessarily have that outside of one or two guys. So what do we think about Houston as we exit this Final Four and close out this season and just their state of the program moving forward. I know obviously this is a devastating loss, and a lot of people are probably going to be throwing narratives out about Kelvin Sampson. He's still not able to get it done, but I think that the program still has a decent trajectory here where things are at, but it's kind of tough for me to imagine right now that he's going to have a better shot at winning the national championship.
I don't know because he really isn't losing a ton on this team. Tugler is only a sophomore. Milos Uzan, also only a sophomore. Emmanuel Sharp's a junior. Obviously, he's going to be losing Javier Francis and Myleik Wilson because they're seniors, and Juwan Roberts and LJ Cryer, but they have a really good recruiting class coming in. They're the number 4 overall ranked class in the 25 class, and Chris is going to be really good for them as a
Mm-hmm.
freshman. Isaiah Harwell too, Bryce Jackson and Kingston Flemings, and I think they already got a transfer too. So I want to say yes, but Calvin Sampson, the way that he roster constructs and the way that he coaches his team's tough. Like he's going to be back in a Final Four, maybe not a national championship, but I definitely think he's going to be back in a Final Four sooner rather than later. Um, and I know I think like in this moment it's easy to say I don't know if they're not going to get back here. This feels like the one time for them. Their window's closed, but just with the people that they're returning next year and who they have coming in, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we see this team back in the Final Four next year.
Yeah, I think the Final Four is definitely a possibility. I just wonder if he's going to have a team again that just has the perfect combination because it felt like this group, they banded together so well and all those pieces just fit so great and they're able to execute at such a high level. I mean, you saw what they did against Duke, being able to piece together that comeback. Your average team isn't able to go out and do that against the likes of a Duke team, which in this tournament was probably the most talented team. Well, probably is kind of an understatement there. I think they were without a doubt the most talented team probably. But yeah, for Houston, this is just obviously devastating. I mean, you saw the look on Kelvin Sampson's face for that last possession where he's just kind of staring off into space. I felt heartbroken for him because you could tell that was a guy that just watched that one slip away and is probably really going to be kicking himself in the offseason over that one. But then you turn over to the victor side of things here with Florida. First title since those back-to-back titles in the 06-07 days. The first Final Four since 2014, and Todd Golden in year 3 of what was somewhat of a rebuild from where Mike White had things. He comes in and wins the national championship. He's the second youngest coach to ever do it behind Jim Valvano in 1983. Brandie, I mean, Florida basketball, out of any program in the country right now, you got to say, I mean, it feels like it's an obvious take because they just won the national championship, but there may not be a program in the country that's riding higher in terms of just future stock right now than Florida because they've got a great young coach that's proven he's able to do it in such a short amount of time. I just think that if you're a Florida fan, you got to be riding high off this one as well into the off season and just looking into the future, knowing your program's in such great hands.
Yeah, I agree. Young coach, only in his third year, and they have really great NIL buy-in, admin who's on the same page. And I think it's really important to point out that Todd Golden not only did this in his third year, but he did it with a roster that didn't even have a top 100 recruit in it, which in and of itself to me is impressive, but more so speaks to the current state of college basketball that we're in the transfer portal era. And he's done a phenomenal job at constructing rosters in this era. So yeah, I agree. Like the I think the world is Florida's oyster for basketball as long as Todd Golden's there. It's just been incredible to see. And yeah, I don't know what guard wouldn't want to go play there after watching what Walter Clayton Jr. did because his performance in the tournament made him a lot of money for the rest of his life. So being able to utilize this national championship game and season as a recruiting pitch on top of already having a good young coach and NIL, it's just a ton of really great things happening for this Florida program.
It seems like I mean I look at this thing right now. Obviously, just winning the national title, they're gonna have to turn the page quickly because in this world with the transfer portal and NIL, things are always moving fast. They're gonna have to replace a lot. I mean, Walter Clayton Jr. He's done. Elijah Martin's done. I believe Will Richards done as well. I think the key piece to bring back for them moving forward is Alex Condon. I don't see a reason that he would go pro or portal. I think that you can expect him back for a junior season. You got a guy like Thomas Houck off the bench that's going to be coming back, I would assume, as a sophomore. So there's
That's
going to be
somebody
peace.
that actually is somebody I wouldn't be surprised if they went to the draft.
Oh,
I don't,
really?
I don't think Condon will, but Ha's been getting a lot of like first round buzz lately.
Oh, okay.
And that's somebody that I think is going to go test the waters and
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be surprised if he ended up getting a first round promise. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think, and some people were thinking that was Condon. I actually think Hawes got a really good shot at the NBA. So I
Mm-hmm.
think he's going to test I wouldn't be surprised to see him test the waters. He may end up coming back, depending on what grades he ends up getting from everybody. But yeah, that's somebody that's been rising on draft boards, especially in the last month or so.
Yeah, I haven't really been paying attention to the draft boards, but that's a good note because I kind of just penciled him in as back. But there's going to be a lot to replace in terms of just overall production. And I mean, UConn with their back-to-back seasons, they made it look so easy just with the way they were able to retain guys and bring guys back. But when it comes to talks of being able to repeat, I mean, obviously you don't want to count anything out, but I feel like next year it may not be. I wouldn't want to say it's a down year for Florida, but I can't imagine they're going to have as much talent coming in and be able to, kind of be at this level. But I guess if you're a Florida fan heading into the offseason, you're going to be losing a lot. But you've got a great coach. Like you said, you've got the NIL behind you. What would you think that the realistic expectation for Florida is coming off this national championship? Because I know UConn making the back-to-back look so easy these last two seasons has kind of skewed people's view of that. But I think that's an interesting thing to watch here in the offseason, just seeing how they're able to reload and what we can expect to see out of them next year.
Right. I mean, in this day and age, it's so hard to find good big men. If both Condon and Howell are back, that's an incredible core to build off of. And I feel like it's so much easier to recruit and find really elite guards. And so, yeah, I mean, I would think, I don't know if the expectations are back to back. I feel like that would be some pretty tough expectations to have.
Yeah.
But definitely like a ring of some kind, whether that's regular season SEC or another SEC tournament ring or just another Final Four appearance. Um, I could I could definitely see that. I do think the SEC is going to take a step back this coming season compared to what it was this past season. So honestly, maybe an SEC regular season is in their future next year.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be hard to imagine the SEC going and being as dominant as they were this year when we look ahead to next year. But I think that they're going to be able to get pretty much whatever they want in the portal, I guess you could say, because the appeal of coming to a program like Florida that's going to get you right with NIL, you're going to get to play under an exceptional coach. There's really all the reason in the world to go play for Florida right now. But it's going to be very intriguing to see how that develops. I know that Rob Wright, I believe, the Baylor guard out of the portal. He was mentioned as maybe one of the Florida was mentioned as maybe one of the
He's
suitors
really
for
good.
him. That would be a very good ad for them. And I think just where you set the expectation with Florida, it's really going to come down to how they're able to replace that guard trio with Richard, Clayton, and Martin because that was just so much of their production all season long. And it was just, it's going to be really hard to replace that. I mean, we saw how UConn, after they won their second of the back-to-back national championships, how they lost so much of that production, and it was really hard for them to get back to what they wanted to be this year. But when you look down the line with Todd Golden, I think it's going to be really, really impressive to see what he's able to do, and the future is going to be very bright for them. And beyond the national championship, since I wasn't able to get any of your takes about the other Final Four action, I mean, Auburn, obviously the number one overall seed, they go down to Florida, the eventual national championship winner. I just wanted to get your thoughts on Auburn as a whole heading into the offseason. How are you feeling after the end of that run there? Obviously, it fell short and didn't end the way that you wanted it to, but just as an Auburn fan and just getting the pulse of the fan base, how do you think things are going to go for Bruce Pearl heading into the offseason?
Yeah, before the Final Four game, Auburn actually got a commitment from Keyshawn Hall from UCF, the leading scorer in the Big 12 this past season. So that should be really great key piece going into next year. On top of that, Chad Baker-Mazara has the option to return, who was our second leading scorer, and Tahad Pettiford has the possibility of returning. He declared for the draft while maintaining his eligibility and made it extremely clear he would not be entering the portal. So if Tahad and Chad can come back and Auburn can build around Tahad, Chad, and Keyshawn Hall, I think that's a great start. But the front court's certainly going to take a step back from the combination of Janai Broome and Dylan Cardwell with Chaney Johnson off the bench. So being able to find three, maybe even four key front court players is going to be really tough because there's not a ton of inventory as of right now in the transfer portal. So Auburn does have some freshmen coming in. Sebastian Williams-Adams, he'll be a front court player, probably will actually get some run off the bench given that Auburn is just absolutely gutted from this past team. But yeah, gotta find some guards to replace, but more importantly, a front court to replace. So Denver Jones has to be replaced. Miles Kelly has to be replaced. They do have Abdul Bashir, the JUCO transfer. He's coming in too. So, him and Hall have replaced a little bit of what we've already had leave with seniors. But this Auburn team's going to look a lot different next year than what it was this past year. And a little nervous about it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, speaking of teams that are going to look a lot different, just to kind of round out all these Final Four teams and what they've got looking ahead, Duke, they're going to be in store for a very different team next year. Obviously, Cooper Flagg, he's going out. Con Knipple, you'd imagine he's probably going to be going to the draft as well. I wouldn't imagine a world where he stays. Kaman Malawach, I'm not really sure what the overall feel is on him right now in terms of the NBA or just his overall future in college basketball. Proctor, I know that some Duke fans think that it might be time for him to just move on. He's been at Duke for 3 years now. He's kind of done just about everything you can there besides take home the national championship. But, I mean, if you're a Duke fan going into this offseason, I don't want to pour any salt into the wound here, but with the way things ended and just the amount of talent that's going to be leaving that program, obviously you've got the Boozer twins coming in who are going to be able to provide a spark at the freshman spot there, and they're going to get talent in the portal. Like, by no means is Duke going to be bad or anything next year. I think they'll be a very good team, but it's hard for me to see them replicating the success they had this year. And I feel like in years to come, we may be talking about Duke is the team in this tournament that kind of let one get away just with the way things ended there against Houston in the Final Four.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what their team looks like next year. I'm interested to see how they utilize the portal. They do have a good freshman class coming in with the Boozer twins. Curious to see if Isaiah Evans stays or if he goes to the draft too. I think he could be a really key piece to build around if he does end up staying, although I doubt he stays.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see what Duke does, but also at the same time, like it almost feels like they're just reloading on the freshman front anyways with their recruiting class. So will there really be that big of a difference for them? I don't know if that, I almost feel like they're going to have just as good of a season next year because of how I think the ACC is not going to be that great again.
Mm-hmm.
I think Louisville is going to have another good season how they had this year, so they'll be back. But um, I think Clemson's going to take a step back, and I don't know. UNC probably will be similar to how they were this year too. So being in the conference that they're in, I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see Duke kind of roll through the ACC like they did this year.
Yeah, UNC, I can't say that I'm super enthused with what they got going on, especially with Ian Jackson being lost to the portal. I think he may end up finding his way to the draft when it's all said and done, but we'll see. I know they got Seth Trimble back today, which was a bit of good news.
Saw
They got
that.
Caleb Wilson coming in, but I mean, I don't think there's really a path to the ACC being significantly better next season, at least not based off what I'm seeing so far. I definitely think that Louisville is going to take a step up from being, the good team they were this year. Maybe they go into that little next tier of being a very good team that can compete with Duke for the ACC. But I think that Duke, I don't think they're going to be as good as they were this year, obviously, because that team was just absolutely phenomenal. But I don't think it's absurd to say that they could possibly be in the mix next year for a Final Four as well. And John Shire, I know he's caught a lot of just shit to say from the media on the way that things finished in the Final Four for him, but I think they've got a good young mind there leading the program, and I think it's only a matter of time before he breaks through and gets himself a chip. Now, whether that's next year or whether it's years to come from now, we'll see. But I feel like this year was definitely a brutal miss for them just with the way things ended. If Duke was able to come out of that Houston game, I think they may have been able to take care of business against Florida. I think they might have had too much for Florida. You may not agree with me on that. I had that debate with some people just saying, man, if Duke could have made it out of that game, I think they beat Florida. What do you think about that? I mean, I hate to play the hypothetical what if game, but when you see a team that's as good as Duke kind of leave things on the table there, it really does make you wonder, how differently we could be talking about things today if certain things fell the other way.
No, I think Florida still would have won if they played Duke. I just think that Florida's a team that can match them in athleticism. They can rebound the ball well. They can shoot it just as good as Duke could shoot it. So I honestly think this would have been a bad matchup for Duke. But I think it still would have been a close game.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows who would have actually won? Let me correct that there. But I don't think it would have been like some blowout or some like Duke's going to run away with this game. This is a great matchup for Duke. Like I honestly think a Duke Florida matchup, like Florida would have still won or pulled it out late. They just have so much more depth than all of these teams, and that
Mm-hmm.
ultimately is what propelled them to a national championship. So, no, I don't think we would have seen a different outcome if they were playing Duke.
I think the only different outcome we might have seen is it would have been a little bit more high scoring, I think, because I know Duke's a
Yeah.
good defensive team, but they didn't have nearly just kind of the toughness and tenacity that Houston has. But it's hard for really any program to replicate that. But before we get out of here and kind of focus on closing out this regular season, the postseason, and getting into the offseason content with the portal and all that, you got any major takeaways from this college basketball season? Our first one with the full court trap, it's officially in the books. I'm kind of sad about that. No more college basketball till November. That's a heartbreaking thought, especially for a
I
Kentucky
know.
fan that's got to watch Mark Stoops football in the fall. So,
Yeah, no, I'm super sad, but I think this is one of the best basketball seasons of all time. And I'm not just saying that because my team was good this season, but ultimately there was just so much talent across the board. So many talented freshmen that we saw, even of teams that didn't make the tournament. So many talented seniors who are living out their final year with their COVID years, which is now going away. So just a really exciting year and so many dominant teams, and for all four of those dominant teams to be in the final four was really special. And to me, I like instilled a lot of faith in the sport of college basketball of like the process is the right way of how March Madness works. And yeah, great season, and hopefully next year can beat it.
yeah, I definitely think that we got the best possible outcome when it comes to the Final Four and the national championship. I mean, I've addressed it many times now, but people complained about the lack of Cinderellas, the lack of upsets. But I mean, when you see that lack of upsets and lack of Cinderellas, you get the best product on the court, which is what we witnessed in the Final Four. I mean, that Auburn and Florida game, that was a tremendous game all around. Houston and Duke, obviously, it wasn't all there throughout the whole game, but watching Houston just find a way to charge back into that game and pull that off, it was phenomenal. And that's probably one of the greater Final Four comebacks we've probably ever seen, to be quite frank. And then Florida going in the national championship game and rallying from down 12 to finish off what's been a dream season for them. And now they're riding high into the offseason. They've got one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. They've got a really, really bright future, like we mentioned. It's definitely, it ended very satisfying in my opinion. I don't think that we could have asked for much better for the diehard college basketball fans that have followed it all season long. But we got to put a bow on it now. It's all over. The one shining moment music is now coming to an end, and we're going straight into the off season with the portal content here coming up. Mark Pope, he's been cooking in the portal recently. I'm excited. There's been a lot of players going off the board already. I guess before we close it out, kind of leading into what our offseason is going to consist of, what's been the biggest move in the portal that you've been moved by so far? I know obviously Keyshawn with Auburn was a big one, but any other ones that have caught your eyes? I know Louisville fans, they're really excited about what they've got going on. They've had a hell of a portal haul so far. And like I said, Kentucky started to make some shock waves as well. But Portal season is well underway. So what's been sticking out to you?
Yeah, I think Michigan getting Yaxel was a really great pickup, and also they brought in Elliot Cadeau too. Really interested to kind of see how that pans out and who else they end up adding, and Trey Donaldson's departure. And then Kentucky too. I really like Jalen Lowe's game. I have kept up with him when he played at Pitt. And I thought that was an awesome pickup on top of Jaden Quintus, depending upon his health post surgery and recovery there. So I really like both of those pickups for Kentucky. Um, who else? I'm trying to think. I haven't kept up as much with some of the portal pickups and stuff, but I feel like I
Conwell to
really,
Louisville was one that moved me. I think that's a good
oh
get
yeah.
for them because he was a stud at Xavier.
And I really liked, I think I told you this before we recorded, Silas Demery to
Yeah.
UConn. I thought he was playing some of the best basketball of his entire career towards the end of the season at Georgia. And so I think he's going to fit really well in Dan Hurley's system, and he's going to be a star in the Big East. So I'm really excited to kind of see how he does there.
Yeah, that's a big get for Dan Hurley because he's going to have a tough, just physical guard. I think that's something they really need and kind of something they were almost lacking in a way this year with their struggles. But I really like what Kentucky's done so far. Obviously, I'm very excited for what we can have if Owe comes back, which I assume is going to happen, and Brandon Garrison as well. The underrated get for us that I've really liked so far is Mo Diabate from Alabama because he is just the absolute dog on the defensive end. He can guard just about anybody. He's physical on the boards. He's not really a high volume spot up 3-point shooter, but he has the ability to stretch the court when he wants to. So that's one of the gets that I like the most. I know the flashy one is obviously going to come with Jaden, which just came out today, and I think that Kentucky's expected to add one more. They're looking for a shooter. I know somebody that can kind of replace that Kobe Bryant role, but I really like the Keyshawn Hall ad for you guys in Auburn. I think he's going to do really well there, and it's going to be interesting to see what you all do to replace Janai Broom. I would imagine that Pearl's probably going to go looking in the portal to try and find someone that can. I mean, finding a Janai Broom in the portal is going to be pretty dang hard, but I would imagine that finding some big men to replace the front court that you all are losing is going to be at the top of Bruce's list.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hoping there's going to be some other bigs that enter and that Auburn can go
Yeah.
after, because slim pickings out there right now, it feels like.
Yeah, the portal, it's still open for a little bit longer, so there's going to be some more names that come out, and there's going to be a lot more to follow. There's still hundreds of kids that are in there right now still looking for a home, but that'll do it for the 2024-2025 regular season coverage on the Full Court Trap podcast. Florida, the national champions. Houston, they lost it in a heartbreaker. Really great college basketball season overall. It's been really fun to cover it, and we're going to keep this thing going throughout the dog days of summer and all the way up until November when it's time to start this all back up again. But for now, this is Luke Tackett and Brandie with the Full Court Trap podcast signing out. We'll talk to y'all soon.